Alright, should be live. Okay. Yeah, so I think we're live, we're working. Everybody check and make sure it's going for me.
Hello.
Yep, I can hear you. Okay. Can the internet hear him? Yep, I get a yep. Sounds good. Okay, so we're doing a little dev Q&A with you today. It's going to be a lot of fun. I have a bunch of questions that we got from the forums, and you guys in the chat, you guys are welcome to put your questions forth as well. I'll try not to double up on them, but, you know, might get confused. We'll see. I even did color coding stuff on all my stuff. And we also have a few beta keys to give out. So I'm going to give a few out during chat during the event. I'm also going to have a few people go to the Fragworld site that we have to get a few keys from there. I'll do that toward the end. I have all these things labeled and running through, so hopefully everybody can hear me. And then Reiji is going to be here helping me out. I'm going to try not to die while I talk to you, because that's always been a concern. So before I get going off that, I'm going to talk about my character that I'm working with, so people will know what's going on. I'm currently looking for a better bow. Are you able to watch this as well, Chris?
Yeah, I've got it open.
Okay, so I'm currently looking for a 4-slot bow so I can rearrange my skills, because the very next level up I get will get me Avatar of Fire, which is one of the bigger game-changing ones. I've never personally tried this one out, but I've heard lots of good things about it.
Avatar of Fire is pretty good for bow users at the moment, actually. There was even discussion of fixing that this morning.
Oh, as far as, like, nerfing it a bit?
Yeah, it's really powerful with bows, because you get less disadvantage from the drawback that it has, where it reduces your cold resistance.
Because you just don't get hit as much?
Yeah, there's also a lot of ability to get a ton of elemental damage on bows, which synergizes really well with that skill.
Yeah, my lightning arrow does a crazy amount of elemental damage. So, once you turn all of your physical damage into elemental damage, it gets pretty fun. I love doing this kind of stuff, and I understand you got to balance that out for the long term. So I'm not going to feel bad if I don't get to be as overpowered as it may be, but it's fun. You know, that's the whole point of the game, right?
Yeah, I agree. It is fun to find builds like that. If we do address it, we'll definitely refund the passive skill points of anyone who's got it, so that they can try out a different build with that character.
Alright. Okay, so since we're talking about skills and support skills, one of the questions we have from Ragnar119 was, any info on interesting support or skill gems that is in development right now?
I can give you an example of an interesting support gem that we have. There's a chance to flee support gem is probably coming in the 099 patch, so that'll be useful for builds where you really want the monster running around scared of you rather than actually fighting back. In addition, something that we were talking about recently that may make it into the game pretty soon is the concept of being able to put a totem support gem on various skills, so you create a totem in the world that casts those skills for you.
Totem? So like you drop like a buff thing down?
That's right, it's a little wooden pillar which will cast the skill that you've attached to it.
Wow, okay. So is that in functionality similar to the old Hydras? Like you attach it to Fireball and you put it down there and it shoots fireballs?
Sure, you can have it cast a whole variety of stuff, like if you put an aura on it, it will cast the aura. If you put the, for example, a mortal call skill, it will cast that, taunting the enemies.
I'm almost dying, sorry. Hold on. I survived. Okay, good. I'm not playing on hardcore this time. Last time I was on hardcore, which was way more stressful. So, anyway. Always funny to almost die. I get myself in trouble all the time.
Nice, we try to make it hard.
Okay, Ragnar119 had a list. I'm going to kind of go through the green ones and then come back around for some more specific stuff. But he was talking about plans for trading inside the forum, like an auction house inside the forum. Do you guys have any interest in stuff like that? I know the forum has a good functionality for linking items, but do you have a way to trade in that way?
The forum is completely integrated with the game in terms of what it has access to, so we definitely can support that, and we do have trading plans that are not yet announced. I mean, we haven't said exactly how it's going to work, and it's very likely that will involve the forum in quite a large degree. I mean, our end goal is that we'd like it so that a person can be trading with someone, and they get interrupted for whatever reason, having to go to school or work, and that they can continue and complete the trade without necessarily even being in the game client, that we haven't announced the specifics of how that's going to work yet.
So that would be cool. I would really appreciate the convenience of not actually having to go find the person and log in.
Yeah, it'll be quite an improvement over the drop trading that we have at the moment.
Yeah, even just a trade window is usually a little better. Whoa! What happened? I got jumped a little bit funny. It's alright. So the next one, I'm actually at the end of Act 2 right here, or very close to it. The question from him was about Act 2. The next time you guys are going to have an Act 2 boss involved.
So the boss for Act 2 is actually pretty ready. I mean, the fight is pretty fun. We're just making a few tweaks and finishing off one more skill that it uses, and then we should be able to drop it in. That's one of the things that, well, obviously we have to get in before open beta, and it's almost there. But we're waiting on a couple of small bits, and hopefully can enable it relatively soon. It's kind of the same time frame as the 6th character class.
Ah, yes, there was tons and tons of questions about him. Again, I'm not going to ask too many more specifics about him, but he's just planned for the next upcoming updates?
Yeah, quite soon now. It's actually very pleasing to play that class. Some of the new mechanics that we have in work really well with it.
What kind of new mechanics do you... I've never actually played him before.
Well, one of the things we've announced that goes with that type of class is the support for traps. And these aren't just traps that you can place in the world, but it also supports a support gem called Trapify. I mean, it's a temporary name for the time being. But it's like the totem support gem in that it allows you to augment skills with a trap version of them. For example, if I take Ice Nova and associate it with traps, then I can now cast Ice Nova traps.
That's intriguing. Could you use that with the totem as well? Because that might get... Is that similar in style?
Yeah, it's basically the same thing. You can choose either to have it as a trap with the payload of your skill, or a totem that casts the skill more frequently but with a disadvantage.
Alright. So, Reiji, it's hard for me to read the chat, so if you see any things pop out from the chat, just let me know, and you can speak up and we can talk about that. But I'm going to keep going on the list of questions that we have. There's lots of questions about character customization. I had like 4 or 5 of them. So, is there plans for that, or is that all cosmetics from the cash shop, or that kind of different options?
A lot of people have asked about customization of the base character, like, you know, earrings and hair colors and that kind of thing, but we often find that the character is completely covered in armor. I mean, it's difficult to not have something on your head, for example. And while there's a lot of opportunity in the cash shop for us to sell different variations, you know, a male ranger, a lot of people don't like playing a female bow user for some reason. But there's a lot of ability for us to sell cosmetic changes to the character. Because the character is quite small on the screen, it's unlikely that we'll go to the level of detail of things like earrings. Having said that, if there's demand, we can definitely look into it. Most of the customization that we try to push is through the build customization that we have, you know, the larger capacitor tree and that type of thing. Yeah. But in terms of cosmetic stuff...
That is quite a tree.
Yeah, the cosmetic stuff will pretty much be whatever you can find in the world, which will hope to have quite a large variety of different item appearances, plus whatever kind of fancy upgrades you want to get from the microtransaction shop.
Yeah, my character is always wearing a big giant iron helmet. You know, I've seen a lot of MMOs who do kind of take that option to like hide the helmet. I mean, that's a possibility, I'd admit.
Yeah, vanishing dye or something.
Sure. There was another question later on the list about dyes, and since you've mentioned them right now, let's go ahead and ask that question. But he was asking about what kind of dyes will be available, and if they're cash shop only things or things you can find in the world.
We haven't solidified our plans on dyes at this stage. It's definitely on the list of things we'd like to support, but we don't exactly know what specifically about an armor piece they're going to change. I mean, there are several approaches we can use for that. With regard to whether they're cash shop only, that's not something we've decided yet, but I suspect that they probably will be, and the rationale there is that because we're not selling power in this game, we do actually have to sell something.
Fair enough. A lot of people like customization stuff over, because I'd prefer not to be able to buy just like a new weapon. Like that would be a little weird to me.
Yeah, we feel that would ruin the game for people.
Lots of guys to kill. Let me scroll down here. You know, they were talking about weapon classes. I don't know anything about the new upcoming character, but they were talking about spears or even strength or dex staves based on other items. Do you have any plans to introduce new weapon classes into the game?
We do, though it's likely that that's going to be scheduled for expansions later. I mean, there's a lot of different things people have suggested, ranging from the spears that you've discussed to slings and various other types of weapons, and we think there's a lot of space there, though we don't want to throw it all into the core base game at the moment. It'd be better if we meter them out as we get the ability to do the art and to create interesting skills and different game styles for those weapons.
Because a spear would be semi-long range? I'm not sure exactly what their intention was, but...
Yeah, I definitely wanted to have a unique playing style, so it's not just like a sword that looks different.
And someone in the chat, Jedikin, asked about selling new levels or acts. Personally, I don't like that idea, because, you know, borrowing off content based on just paying money for that content is different than what I was expecting. But what is your guys' stance on that?
We pledged from the start that all of the game content is going to be freely available, so we're not going to be allowing people to buy quests or acts. We'll just let it be available for everyone, and that way it encourages us to make better quality stuff for all the users. We'll have a larger player base because of that, and people won't feel left out. And we really want to have it so that people who don't intend to spend any money for whatever reason are still able to get a full experience from the game. That way, they'll stick around, so that the people who do want to spend money have more people to play with.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. People are talking about... That's pretty funny. A lot of the chat is talking about they want to see a secret Kiwi level with a Kiwi King to destroy. What do you think about that?
I think if we had it so you could kill Kiwis, then we'd be in some big trouble here. New Zealand really loves its Kiwis. I mean, they're an endangered species. There aren't many of them. They're so cute. They can't fight back.
They can't even fly. It's so sad. But adorable. No, I forgot. I have a Kiwi. Let me bring it out. Because I can. I have a silver Kiwi for being a supporter. I know you guys have been talking about that. That's a relatively recent addition. Is the supporting function. You want to talk a little bit about that for us?
Oh, that's really cute. I'm glad you've got your Kiwi out. Well, the support thing, we're really pleased by how well that's gone. We're partly inspired by Kickstarter and other similar services where people can offer different tiers of support based on, you know, how much they like the game or how much money they have available at the time. And we try to design a set of Kiwis in a way so that people get something special that they can show off, and they've been received really well. I mean, we find they fit in well. As far as a cute pet goes, they fit in relatively well with the dark world we've got, because they're not a sparkle pony or whatever. And yeah, people have really liked them. I mean, I see people wanting to upgrade the support pack they've got entirely because they want the gold on the gold Kiwi, which is really good to see, because we have big plans on what to spend their money on.
Someone earlier in the chat had one of the platinum ones, I believe, which is the highest tier, or diamond. Was it diamond? It might be diamond.
The diamond Kiwis, yeah.
Yeah, the diamond one looks really crazy. I think it looked like it was flying. Maybe I was seeing it wrong, but it looked like it was flying.
It has a beam of light that goes into the sky above it. It is on the ground like the other Kiwis, though.
Yeah, it has like two drums, looks like, on the side.
Yeah, I think they're diamond and gold.
I seem to have gotten myself lost in this dungeon. I don't know where I am. Let's move on to another question. Someone mentioned they were talking about voice acting or cutscenes included in open beta or release or even farther. Is there any interest in doing something like that?
We've got a huge amount of voice acting coming up soon. There are huge scripts written for most of the characters and all the NPC dialogue and the playable characters, many of the enemies, many of the bosses you encounter, and that's underway. We're casting people, we're starting to get stuff recorded, and it's going to be really good. We'd love to have a lot of that in before we enter open beta. With regard to cutscenes, though, that's completely different. It's not something we currently intend to do, partly because it's icing on the cake, and we'd rather spend that money actually improving the core content. We feel that voice acting is something that affects you while you're playing, whereas the cutscenes are just a nice break from gameplay. It'd be cool to have them, but until we've got the game to the scope that we want, we'll spend money on more important development things.
Alright. I could see that being both a positive and a negative. Because everyone loves a good cutscene every now and then, but if it's interrupting your game every single time, I can see that being a bit, and also the amount of resources it may take to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it'll be nice. It'll be nice in the future to have a cool intro, but it's unlikely to come up soon. I mean, it's also not something we have any specialization in. You know, we don't have a cinematics team in our company. We'd have to farm it out to another company to do that.
Like one of those guys who do the crazy Star Wars trailers, something with all the high-res CG. I'm sure that costs tons of money. I don't know anyone who makes that stuff.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to look into in the future.
Okay, they were talking about the stash tabs and the character slots costing only about 30 points each, which is roughly $3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I personally spent a lot of my money on the extra stash tabs, being the pack rat that I am. But is there other plans for like very high or very low point cost items that aren't included in that list?
Yes, there are. The reason why we priced those ones at that price is we wanted them to be affordable so that people could have something to spend their money on. But in addition, we didn't want to make them too cheap because these stash tabs stick around on all your characters, all the different leagues that you're playing in. They will get access forever. So if you buy an extra 4 tabs now, that's 4 extra tabs every time you play Path of Exile under any circumstances in the future. In terms of higher or... Sorry, go on.
Does that affect your server? Like, I'm sure you still have to store all that database somewhere, right? So I'd imagine that...
That's right, it is an additional saving load for us, but having said that, the money can go directly towards paying for the servers that will hold that. I mean, yes, it does cost a little bit more, but it's, you know, it's not really a problem. To answer your question about the expensive and the cheap microtransactions, we definitely have stuff coming that will be cheaper than $3 per thing. You know, there's a variety of weapon and spell effects that, you know, the lower tier ones will definitely be quite affordable, something we'd expect people would get. With little thought behind it. And of course there will be expensive premium things, you know, like on the same tier as the Diamond Kiwi, obviously not in terms of cost though. And those
$1,000 for a single item seems rather expensive.
Yeah, well, part of the rationale behind the Diamond Kiwi is the person spending $1,000 is also getting $1,000 in microtransaction credit, and they're getting, you know, unique, designed by them in the game, a custom forum avatar, a ton of signed stuff shipped to their house, you know, the list goes on. The Diamond Kiwi is just a thank you, a status symbol that they get to show the fact that they've supported the game.
I really liked that system you guys had set up. Indeed, it was very similar to a Kickstarter, where you get the actual value of your donation already off the top, and then they add so much more on top to really incentivize the purchase.
Yeah, it's the least we can do considering that people are pre-ordering here. I mean, we don't have a wide range of microtransactions yet, so most of the $1,000 they spend is not actually useful unless they really want a lot of stash tabs.
That's a lot of... How many could you possibly have? Doesn't it hit a cap at some point?
I think the cap is 65,000, but no one's tested it
wow.
yet.
Okay.
Please do.
Good luck. I actually had a bug that I'll show you when I get back to town here in a moment, where after purchasing another couple stash tabs, they went out of order. I don't know if you were aware of that.
Well, yeah, we are aware of that. In fact, in my copy of the game locally in the office, we do have the ability to reorder the stash tabs, and we're expecting to deploy that to the beta ROM sometime within the next week. So you'll be able to change where they are, and anyone can do that regardless of whether you've bought new tabs or not. So if you don't like the current order and you want your gems on the left, it's easy to drag it across.
Okay, so whole tabs will be moved, or not the contents, but the tabs itself will be movable?
Yeah, you can just reorder them. In the future, we'll also support the ability for people to buy premium stash tabs, which they're able to name and set colors to. So, for example, if you want your weapons tab to be red and to say the word weapons on it, you can upgrade to a premium tab that allows you to do that.
I like that idea. For someone who loves to be organized as much as possible.
Got an interesting question.
Okay, go ahead.
Vincent says, I've heard rumors that the less people there are currently farming in Chaos, the more likely it is to better drops, and the more people in Chaos, and less items are dropped, as a way to even out the amount of loot on the server. I guess he's looking for a confirm/deny.
That's exactly the type of superstitious thing that I love hearing, but unfortunately that's actually not true. It literally doesn't matter in this case.
I played Chaos a long time ago, maybe a month or two ago, with my level 67 Ranger that I had. That was some crazy stuff. I don't know. I know it's gone through a lot of changes, but what are some of the new stuff that you guys have done with Chaos over the last month or two?
So it's hard keeping the balance of chaos about right, because it's not something that we're keeping in that form in the final release game. It's kind of an end game that people can play in for the time being, and although our end plans for this do everything that chaos does and more, so we're not worried about it changing, it's something that we can't devote a large amount of development time towards balancing, and so small unintended consequences from elsewhere occasionally make it quite a lot harder or quite a lot easier for players, and although we work to try to rebalance it after that, it's difficult to get it quite right. I mean, I'm sure once we have most of the game down in terms of balance, it'll be easy for us to focus on making the end game extremely compelling. In terms of what we've changed recently, one of the major changes in the patch 097 was to make it actually quite a lot harder. We made the damage much more spiky because we slowed down the speed that monsters attack, adding more damage to them, and we actually undid quite a lot of that in 098 because we found that it was one-hit killing the players too much. So as it stands at the moment, the monsters are a bit faster again in Chaos, but slower throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, it was super scary and hardcore. Like you get hit once or twice and you're almost dead and you're running for your life.
Yeah, it can be fun at the point where it doesn't actually completely kill you in one hit, but unfortunately it's a bit unfair when it does take you out without you being able to do anything about it.
You know, I have noticed one random thing. I know I haven't talked about a lot of questions, but I haven't seen a whole lot more of the quality-based skill gems. Or skill gems quality, is that based on your personal item rarity more now, or is it just not as common as it used to be?
I believe that at some stage a few months ago we reduced the amount of quality items that dropped by 3 times, though I think that actually did not affect skill gems, and it might just be chance that you're noticing less of them. I can look at some statistics to see. I mean, we can pull up logs on that kind of thing and see what rate is they're dropping and check to make sure it's still okay, but I'll make a note to look into it.
Alright. One of the people wanted to know about community projects or events that would give you possible to win the points, like the cash shop points, without actually making a purchase. Do you have any plans to give those out?
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, it's easy for us to do that. So far we haven't run many events while those points have existed, so it's not something we've looked into, and we want to be careful to not set a precedent where the rewards are really bad or really good for doing that type of thing, so we're still thinking about it. But the other side is that people have often suggested that we give, for example, the Kiwis out to winners of the competitions, but we're trying to be careful to not just make the Kiwis a worthless thing that we give out to everyone. We'd rather that it was special for the people that have decided to support us, so we're making sure that we're not saying any bad statements by giving this type of stuff out too easily.
Fair enough. I'm about to spend my point for Avatar of Fire, so I was checking to see what kind of increase I could see for my DPS.
You should see a DPS increase there if you've chosen stuff that synergizes with both elemental damage and with increased weapon damage. So well, especially as you pick up.
A lot of my gear I have equipped currently doesn't have the elemental damage on it, but I had a couple things that will boost that if I can find them. But I'm not going to sit there and go through all that stuff right now.
Fair enough. It's one of those things where when you start getting the 40% elemental damage per point skills, you'll really feel that increase. Because previously it would only increase a small amount of your overall damage, now it will increase the whole lot.
Yeah, because I definitely increased on DPS by quite a bit. This went from, I think, 5 something to 766. So much stuff to go, more killing to be done. Oh, here's a fun one. Oasis BHRNW. I don't know if that's pronounceable or not. He wanted to know if the founders of Grinding Gear Games got stranded on Rayclast, who would survive the longest and why?
Well, first I'd like to say hi to Oasis. He's actually the very first person we invited into the Path of Exile Alpha, so he's very special to us. Secondly, that's a really good question. I'm not sure how to answer that. I think there are definitely some more survival-oriented members of the team. I don't particularly know how to justify which people it would be, though.
Well, I've only met you personally, so I don't know the rest of the team much at all.
Well, it's not something we fantasize about constantly, but it's an interesting question.
How do you think you would survive? Do you think you'd be able to make it out there?
No, I'd be pretty scared. There's some horrible monsters, especially coming up later. I'd probably just stay on the beach with the sand spitters.
Those things bug the hell out of me. They're shooting rocks out of their butt, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, we've changed their AI a little bit in an upcoming patch.
Are they too accurate right now, or just something else going on?
I think the current intention is we're making it so that they group up a little bit more, you know, in clumps of guys when they're firing at you, and this means it'll be easier to to kill a group of them at once rather than having to run all over the place to get each one in turn.
I know one personal frustration of mine was that the crabs with the shells, you shoot them and you thought they were dead, but it turns out they were just hiding the other crabs.
That seemed like such a good idea at the time, but the players get really frustrated by it.
Yeah, I thought that one's dead. I'm gonna move on. Oh nope, he's still there. He's shooting at me now. Oh, that's what. It's all right. Someone was asking a question. They heard that a rework was planned for the summons in the future. Any more information you can give us about that?
There's a lot of things we're throwing in the bucket of that one. There's about 8 areas that we want to improve with regard to the minion stuff. I mean, for a start, we're going to make it so they move between areas with you. Secondly, we're going to fix all the bugs related to the fact that you can go to town and your minions take on a life of their own, not attached to you anymore. And the way that you can summon more than your limit if you stack gems in a weird way. And the way that there's no UI for them, and their general behavior not being about right. There's all sorts of stuff that we want to fix to make minions compelling, and most of these things need to be balanced around each other. I mean, obviously if minions do change between areas as you change area, then that's something that affects, how much damage and stuff they should be doing. So we're trying to tackle all of that as one big lump, which is tentatively called the minion patch, and I'm not sure whether that's going to be the 0910 patch or the 0911 patch, but it's definitely something that's on the very soon horizon, definitely before open beta.
Alright, so it's up and coming. There was also a rumor about the ability to switch weapons quickly. You have confirm or deny on that one from Wolfie42?
Yeah, that's coming. In fact, one interesting thing about it is the fact that because your skill gems go in your weapons, it means that as you switch them, you'll be switching out some of your skill gems, but not others. And this means you can, for example, have, if you've got a bow in your main hand, you can have it so that your bow skill gems are in your bow, and if you switch to a sword, you've now got your sword skills attached, but your support ones or defensive ones are in your armor, and therefore they're the same regardless of which set weapons you're using.
It's interesting. So it kind of changes your build a little bit that way.
Yeah, for any gems that you have in your weapons at the time.
Egress from in-game was asking about the ability to, like maybe a cash up item, the ability to reset all of your skill gems or skill passives at once.
There's a lot of debate about that. We haven't made a decision there. I'm not personally happy with the concept of selling that. I feel it's too close to pay to win, and I would rather that we had strong in-game mechanics for that type of thing, rather than relying on people to pull out their credit card whenever they make a mistake on their character, to be honest.
Sounds fair to me. I don't know if that would be considered overpowered or not, but it would definitely be something that would be more challenging for people without the cash to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'd rather be able to say that we're not offering in-game advantage to people with money and actually be able to stick to that promise, rather than kind of borderline stuff like that. I mean, I've heard people explicitly say, the day they do this is the day I quit, and I kind of agree that I would want to play that type of game less if people could dramatically change their character build for a few dollars.
I know what you mean. So
these words will come back to haunt me later, of course.
They always do, right? Yeah. The other question from Wolfie42, he was asking how the servers are doing. I know you had that public stress test not too long ago, and from everything I was playing during that, it seemed to be working pretty good. So how are you guys holding up with the new beta population and all that stuff?
Well, that's going really well, actually. I was very pleased. It was something that worried me, but thankfully there was no cause to be concerned. Our server guys assured me that we'd be able to handle that amount of load, and we did. And it broke all of our expectations, rather than breaking all of our servers, so that was quite positive. The stress test weekend did yield a few issues that we can fix, nothing particularly fatal. I think we had 9 incidents in all, most of which, hopefully didn't affect, many players didn't notice any of them. Occasionally we had to reboot certain parts of it. And we've now got a lot of information on what causes those, and we're working on fixing them. And I'm sure that it'll be a lot more stable before we run any future public events like that. In terms of capacity, we were able to push it to over 7,300 players online at once, which was only bottlenecked by the amount of RAM that we had available on our servers, so we'll make sure to buy some more RAM for next time.
So was there a queue that popped up at some point, or was it just how many people that were able to play it safely?
So the way we did that is we had a queue which we can set how many people we want on the ground, and if there are too many people then they'll just get queued. So we initially started
Sorry. Say that again?
So we have queue, which is the number of people we'd allow into the realm, and it started off relatively low while we, gradually increased the number. And we were able, in the end, to increase it all the way up before we ran out of people who were interested in playing at any one time in that weekend, which was the 7,300 people. The reason we had the queue there was that if we did encounter a problem, we could lower the queue number and then work to fix the problem so that the people who were playing at the times could still continue to play.
Alright, seems like a safe bet. Oh, someone had a question, Swedish Tavern had a question about any more news about a mercenary.
So this guy is actually awesome. He's done a lot of YouTube videos for us, so I'd like to say thanks to him. With regard to a mercenary, we have some very interesting plans there, but unfortunately we can't talk about them yet. And these are actually really cool plans, so I'm excited to announce them in the future.
Alright. He was also specific to ask about keystone for dual-wielding two-handers. I don't know. It seems pretty specific.
I'll bring it up for the design guys.
I think that would be an interesting method, but perhaps balance issues?
Yeah, there potentially are. I mean, there'd need to be some kind of drawback with it. It's actually something we discussed in the past, but haven't found a good solution to.
I'd imagine attack speed would have to be lower. That's a guess. Anyways, there was a mention specifically from Swedish about, I'm assuming one of the developers named Russell. He was wondering how long until you let him loose and let him go all out with the graphic thingies.
I'm sure Russell would like that. There are reasons why people don't go all out with that kind of stuff, but I think everyone here is internally quite happy with it.
Oh, there's another mention of him from a long time ago. You had an interview with the RPG Fan Podcast, and he's looking to see if you are forgetting about the Bloody Mess cosmetic pack in the shop. Extra gore for people to play for.
Extra gore is one of the cosmetic things that we can add relatively soon. I suspect that it'll be within the first 5 or so cosmetic things like that added to the shop, so the time frame for that is probably within a month or 2, but I'm not totally certain yet. We are prioritizing gameplay content like Act 3 rather than the development of microtransactions because, gameplay content affects everyone and lets them have more fun, whereas the microtransactions are mostly there for us to make money, so it'll come as soon as it can, but hopefully we'll do a good job with Act 3 and such first.
Alright, he's just making sure you didn't forget, apparently. It's been a while.
Oh, we have the gore meeting every day.
There's another question from Das Roach. Will there be any mod support, like add-ons or UI changes or user-made content?
It's very unlikely, and there are a few reasons for that. The first reason is that because we're an online game, we can't allow people to make their own, single-player mods and content. It pretty much has to be, what we provide, due to the fact they don't have their own servers and stuff, and that's done for a variety of reasons. For a start, people are more likely to buy microtransactions so that we can continue development if they're playing on our servers where they can show those microtransactions off to other people. With regard to modifying the online copy of the game, most of the reasons that people want to do that are nefarious ones, like trying to get an advantage in other players to make things stand out more, and that's not something we can really support officially from a fairness point of view. We don't yet know what our policy on that will be, but I'm sure that if people are trying to modify the client for advantage, that it will probably not go particularly well for them. In terms of user-made content, we're definitely keen to get suggestions from users, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of contests in the future that help us identify areas where users can help, and then allow them to be creative and we'll use their work in some way. Though, in general, we probably won't support the ability for users to make their own content that's uploaded to us automatically. There's all sorts of moderation issues with that, as well as legal ones.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, there is a kind of a way, if you want to do the full supporting package, the Diamond package allows you as a player to design with you guys, design a unique item.
That's very true, and I'm sure there will be more opportunities like that in the future. The other issue that someone brought up was that the users are the user-made content. I mean, the game is more fun when there's more friends to play with and people to do PvP with, and that's what people are by playing the game. They are part of the content of the world themselves.
Yeah, so I'm currently at the spot where the Act 2 boss will be, but that is the end of Act 2 for now, so I'm going to move on to back to Act 1 on the next difficulty level.
It makes me wonder whether or not we can patch in that boss in a way that doesn't appear in the patch notes, so that people literally get surprised one day where they're expecting nothing to be there and then they get destroyed.
That sounds like fun. I vote do that.
I'll see what I can do.
There was a question about pants. Specifically, right now your pants are included with your armor, but a lot of characters don't actually wear pants physically. So he's curious if there's going to be a slot maybe somewhere over here for like actual like leg wear.
The reason why we don't have a pants slot is because we'll fall victim to the mod dilution thing that some other action RPGs get, where if you add 3 or 4 more slots because they look cool or because other games have them, then you have to spread out the effect of the items over 3 or 4 more items, and that means you're getting about a third less effect from every mod, and we've experimented with that type of thing. I mean, we've had pants slots and shoulder pads and cloak slots and stuff in our internal versions many years ago, but it just didn't work out, you know. I mean, look at Diablo 1, for example. They had barely any slots, and the items felt incredibly meaningful. So each additional slot needs a lot of justification, and we just can't push it to the pants slot, unfortunately. Plus, none of the guys in the office wear pants anyway.
Ah, fair enough. You know, you gotta follow reality wherever you can, right?
Indeed.
Alright, so we had a specific question from Ragnar again about how will Cutthroat work. I've heard only rumors of this, but I don't know if you guys are allowed to talk about too much. The Cutthroat mode.
Actually, Cutthroat is what I'm working on today. Basically, we've made some vague promises that we might be running a Cutthroat event this coming weekend, and I've been recruiting some testers to help out maybe tomorrow tentatively with some kind of internal testing of that. I think there's a thread in the beta general discussion forum for anyone who's listening. If you really like Cutthroat and want to help out, then there may be some stuff going on tomorrow. But basically the way that it works is it's designed for super hardcore players who really like losing their stuff and losing their experience and so on. You know, the type of player who wants to make backwards progress rather than forwards. And it's inspired by games like Ultima Online and Darkfall Online, where you lose items on death. And basically, it's a really harsh mode where when you find stuff, you have to decide, do I wear this to get advantage and risk losing it, or do I stash it away safely and maybe not actually get the ability to play with it? It creates a really interesting dynamic where even white items are valuable to you because you have to wear something to try to get your stuff back from another player. From a technical point of view, the way that it works is that you can openly invade other people's instances, and there's full PvP. So you just literally have to encounter other players who want to kill you and take your items. And it's very interesting trying to deal with both the monsters and other players at the same time.
That sounds harsh in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but it's a lot of fun. So
people will be able to join your instance and just try to attack you? Is that essentially?
That's right, yeah.
And steal all your stuff?
Yeah, if they kill you, you drop all your stuff, and you lose a lot of experience, and then they gain that experience.
Jeez. That sounds like fun, but man, that sounds really dangerous.
It's one of those things that is really fun to play for like a single day. We don't know how well it runs for a multi-week league yet, but that's something we'll find out. But our intention is for the time being that we'll run events from 1 to 3 hours, so that people can't get too far ahead of each other.
That's true, because if someone was level 40 versus level 10, it's not really much of a difference, or as far as the level 10 guy has not much of a chance.
Yeah, briefing is a problem, but that's what makes this kind of thing fun. And we have to stress, it's only for about 5% of the players. I mean, there's only probably 3 of us on the office who would really actually play this as a full-time game mode. The rest of the people prefer more conventional gameplay and expect the other players to be like that. Some people are really keen for this type of thing because they played games like Ultima Online or Darkfall, and they really want a lot of adrenaline while they're playing, whereas other people want a kind of safe, I'm not going to lose any progress type of gameplay.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally, I can barely handle hardcore. So to me, that's extreme to me. I don't know if I'll be able to do that. Another random question from Ragnar we had. Who are the characters in the background of the official site, and will we see them in game?
The one wearing Marauder items is Kaum, and the one wearing Ranger items is Hiri, and they are both lore characters that are depicted on unique items and such, basically heroes that used to exist in the world, and there are quite a lot of these. Obviously they each follow an archetype, there's a caster and there's a ranger, and there's a marauder style one, so you can find their unique items, and I can't say anything yet about whether you will encounter people like them in-game.
Okay, so a bit of a touchy subject, I guess, but they were asking another specific one, but I know the 6th class is being worked on, and it's probably coming up, you already said soon, but they were actually asking about planning to include a 7th class, and what that might do to the passive skill tree, or any intentions for that.
I'm going to have to go with no comments there.
Okay. How many acts do you plan to have in the full game?
As many as we can. We have a 3rd act almost ready, and the 4th act has a very small amount of planning done on it. You know, there's some concept art and some rough plans for what's going to happen. We have literally no idea what Act 5 and onwards will yield. We're intending, once we're releasing the game with the open beta, will have 3 acts, and then we start work on the 4th one in earnest. And it's hard to say when that one will be ready, but it hopefully won't be too long. Which is, too long is a little longer than soon. And our intention is to continue to add acts for as long as we can, because it's a game we want to support for 10 years, and we expect that by the time we have 5 or 6 acts in it, there's going to be a huge amount of content for people to do. And at that stage it will be harder for new competitors to come up against us as well, because we'll have had, 10 years of development time.
Oh, so that's far, far in the future, is basically what you're saying.
Well, we're already 5.5 years into the development, so sure, but in another few years we'll definitely have quite a lot more content. I mean, tentatively, I'd love to release an act a year for as long as we can. It may even be faster, depending on how the content pipeline goes, and if we make a lot of money, we can afford a lot more developers and really get that going faster.
Huh. They're referring to those characters on the main screen, referring back to the old Baldur's Gate and Pools of Radiance mods, where these were famous lore characters, but you didn't necessarily fight them. I thought that was an interesting thought.
Yeah, I never played those mods myself, unfortunately.
Alright, Smoochie wanted to ask if you had any plans for cosmetic purchases for your summoned creatures, like zombies and skeletons, that kind of thing. Any plans for cash shop purchases to make your zombies do the Thriller dance or that kind of stuff? I don't know. It's probably copyrighted.
We do actually. we do have some plans to make the zombies look different, so that you can change how your minions look. I mean, just off the top of my head, for example, it's feasible that we could change the color of the spectres, for example. I mean, that's not something that's discussed, it's just the type of thing which players might be able to pay for. There are different skins for zombies coming. As for the Thriller dance, I suspect you're right that that is quite heavily copyrighted.
We had a question from Rita XD. Lots of A's in there. Will there be any sort of clan or guild war of functionality?
There will. Potentially not on release, but it's definitely a direction we'd like to go in the future. I mean, we've often joked about the guild expansion where we add that type of stuff, and we're not quite sure on the timing of that, but it's definitely heavily demanded by the users.
Do you have a guideline on how many quests there will be per act upon full release, or is there no set number on individual acts?
We can definitely add more quests to the existing acts. The number won't increase massively, like it probably won't be more than, say, 50% higher than it currently is. With Act 3, we actually had to go through our quest document and throw away as many as we could to try to get it down to a reasonable number, because it's such a plot-heavy act. There are an awful lot of quests in there. It's important that we meet the right balance between having quests that are meaningful and not spamming, kill 10 rats and bring their tails back to the sky in town. I mean, we've tried to avoid that type of relatively meaningless quest. We'd rather the players just went and killed what they want to and got interesting rewards rather than, grinding out a specific type of junk drop-off of monster. And so because of that, we try to do quests that involve specific tasks that help out the world. And I would expect that something along the lines of 8 to 10 quests per act is about the right amount of content there. It's also worth noting there's a lot of other stuff that can kind of function as a quest, but isn't explicitly on the quest screen, and we'll be adding more of that type of thing in the future.
Yeah, one of the guys in chat was referring back to the 7th character, and he was saying that you look at the passive tree and there's actually 7 starting points. I don't see that. Can anyone else point that out to me?
He's referring to the
I think
fact
that's
that
the typo for the 6th.
there are 6 starting points laid out in a shape around the middle, and the middle is not a character's starting point. I mean, it's not even designed to be one at this stage, because the skills there aren't, laid out as beginner-friendly skills. Conceivably, that could change in the future, potentially.
Oh, I think maybe he's referring to the point in the middle that just has a lot of the big. It's the center point for the thing with a lot of different keystones and other things in the middle. I don't think that's ever going to be a starting point.
If it is, we're being very cagey about it.
Okiki has a question if there's any plans to improve support for NVIDIA 3D Vision.
That would indeed be cool. We don't actually have any hardware for that in the office, but it's something we'll look into as soon as we get time. I mean, it's something that would be really nice to support, and I suspect that once we've got the game released, we'll be able to look into it.
NECX Venom wanted to know if there's any game feature or design you are looking to go back and maybe totally redo, like flash passives or a specific class, anything like that?
There's quite a lot of stuff on our concern list that I'm sure will get attention. We've already highlighted Avatar of Fire as one of them, and plus probably about 25% of the skills didn't turn out to be as good as we'd wanted, and we're definitely going to revisit them and make them more fun. In some cases it will be dramatic redesigns on those things.
Another Swedish had a specific question about collecting uniques from the same individual. A lot of uniques, to give some backstory, a lot of uniques have like a name or a person or a bit of lore attached to that unique. He was wondering if there was plans to have someone who can collect multiple uniques from the same person to get like a glow or a visual cue showcasing that they had collected that many materials.
That's definitely something we could do. There are a couple of interesting side effects here. The first one is that we'll probably be selling the ability to look like those, unique characters as microtransaction things anyway. I mean, there's some promotional material we've got. In fact, it's on the website now, I guess, where you can see them decked out with all the full particle effects and so on. That's definitely something people will be able to visually upgrade to if they're interested in. Of course, that confers no gameplay advantage. With regard to item sets in the game, the leading reason why we haven't actually added support for specific sets so far is that we find it actually has a very gameplay disruptive effect where players don't want to break their set in order to put more items on. They put on a set, they're happy with it, and then they can't really change their character without the horrible ordeal of having to lose their bonus. And in testing, this hasn't worked very well for us.
I always had that same concern playing other similar action RPGs. Once you have a full set, it's really tough to try to upgrade any single piece.
Yeah, it's territory we can explore in the future, but at this stage we don't have any firm plans to.
There's been quite a number of questions I'm seeing about day-night cycles in the game or dynamic weather effects.
We definitely want to improve the range of weather effects that we have. There's been a lot of internal discussion about adding a full-screen fog effect that enables us to have very realistic wind and much better fog in places. That type of thing will definitely make it look a lot better. In terms of day-night cycles, that one is tough because at the moment we've staggered the areas throughout the game so that they do follow a day-night cycle. When you go from area to area, the sun changes position. We found that the art looks a lot better if we can lock the day-night into one place for a given area, like we design it so that it's got shadows in a certain direction and a certain light color. It's not going to work very easily having it so that that's dynamically done.
Yeah, you would get weird artifacts of shadows in places that you weren't expecting, I'm sure.
Well, one specific technical reason is we have to know how far shadows are going to cast, so we know how far away to draw objects that cast shadows. And having it so that that changes while you're playing means that the performance of an area may change dramatically depending on how much stuff is essentially nearby. That's a problem we'd rather not solve, considering we feel it looks quite nice when it's been specifically chosen by an artist as is.
I can see that. I remember earlier versions of Chaos. I haven't played Chaos recently, so I can't speak for all of that. But earlier versions of Chaos would have a random map with a lot of random things thrown on it, as the name Chaos kind of entails. But a lot of that stuff was really funny because you'll end up with like this outdoor area that I'm in now, like the beach, but it'll have a bunch of like jars and pots all over the place because it's just been strewn about that normally would be in a dungeon. Thought that was entertaining.
Yeah, that was remarkably easy to do and had the desired effect.
Also, I had at one point 3 large chests all spawn in the same spot. That was fun.
That's the great thing about randomness. Very, very rarely you feel really good about it.
Yeah. We were just talking about that, but another one from him. He's talking about there'll be an area in the game where if you haven't mastered your build, you will get destroyed. I'm assuming he's referring to kind of a chaos, but non-casual friendly areas.
Our eventual endgame plans can definitely be described as not casual friendly.
Now the max level is currently 99. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's 100, but we don't expect people to reach either one very easily.
Like I said, the highest I ever got was 60-something, so I didn't get close. But I'm assuming it ramps up exponentially as you get up there.
It does indeed. This is partly because we want players to be able to play through the content in the same amount of time it would take to play through another game, you know, so that they get the same type of experience, and also that they can feel a greater degree of mastery, you know, after a day or two of playing their character, but that if they really want to specialize in a guy, there's a harsh diminishing returns with how that's represented in their level, so you get the impression that, say, a level 80 guy has been playing for an awfully long time, a level 90 guy has really put, you know, a year of time into their character, level 93 implies the guy, you know, he played it since the game came out 5 years ago, and so on and so on, you know, it's a highly logarithmic thing.
So that's an extensive amount of playtime.
Yes, indeed.
There was questions specifically about the cutthroat thing. I was intrigued to learn a little bit about that myself. He wanted to know about grouping in cutthroat, is if friendly fire is active.
I believe that friendly fire is not active. If you're in a party, then you are safe in your party, but we've actually raised the number of people that are allowed in the instances, so that if you're in a full party, people can still invade and challenge you.
Would they be aware that you're in a full party, so they would have a chance to get a party of their own? Is that kind of how that would go?
I'm not sure if that's currently represented. They may have to work it out by the 6 guys beating down on them.
Oh, it would be shocking to be jumped into a group and then, oh, look, there's 5 of them here. That's kind of fun. That's kind of the point of the game, though, yeah. I guess, right? For cutthroat mode.
Cutthroat is pretty hard and unforgiving, yes. I mean, for players who actually want a fair fight, they should probably play the base game instead.
Yeah, me personally, I'm not... I don't think that challenge is where I'm going to be enjoying my particular time, but I'm glad that it's there for the other people to enjoy. We've gone well over our time here. Okay, but we can still do a few questions from the chat if you guys have some.
Yeah, Smoochie had another one. He knows that there's going to be different rankings depending on the league. He's wondering how often ladder rankings would be reset.
That's a difficult question, and one that's best determined by experimentation. We find that something along the lines of 3 months seems to work relatively well before players are clamoring for, you know, the ability to compete on a new ladder, but I suspect that our eventual goal is that we will probably have many different durations, so we could run, for example, a single week ladder or a month-long ladder or even a, you know, 3-hour ladder like we do most weekends, and that way players who have different degrees of commitment of time will be able to compete.
I saw those happen. I never got a chance to participate in most of them, but you have a really neat setup for those weekend ladders. Don't you have one coming up this weekend as well? Want to talk about that for a bit?
So it's likely that this weekend's one will probably be the Cutthroat event I was discussing, but yes, typically on weekends we do have a 3-hour event, and it's generally a hardcore rush. Both the top players get to around level 30, and they display a remarkable amount of skill in doing that in that time frame and staying alive, and we give out a bunch of in-game items as rewards to them. We'll be trying the Cutthroat one this week.
Level 30 in just 3 hours? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's quite impressive indeed. So it'll be interesting to see how things go trying the new experimental league type instead. It'll hopefully go okay.
Is there any plans for like a spectator mode for something along those lines? Like, I know this is not necessarily an esport title, but it might be cool to see some of those fights go down.
I do agree. I'd like to have it. For the time being, we're going to have to rely on streaming like this, though.
Yeah, I guess that would make the most sense. But it'd be neat to see some sort of tournament-style kind of mode like that to be available.
Yeah, I can see that would push it towards being an esport. We have to finish the core game first, though.
I have a question from Dragnar wondering if the witches will get more spells. Like, currently Fire only has Fireball and Firestorm, and that's it.
They will. There are plenty more on the drawing board.
Is there a guideline to how many skills each kind of potential build is supposed to have, or is it just set up kind of how, as it is now?
We'd like to at least double it, and that's only in the short term. I mean, I'm sure long term we'll just pile in the skills as much as we can. Also, by fixing up a lot of skills that didn't, well, when I say a lot, by fixing up a few skills that didn't turn out quite how we wanted, that will add more viable options for players who currently ignore those because they're not quite powerful enough.
Any ideas of which skills are actually looking to be changed right away?
There are a few which are immediately concerning, things like Conversion Strike, which I think is actually Dominating Blow in the beta version. Anyway, skills like that we barely see anyone use, and this is probably because they just don't have the raw power to actually be useful in many situations, or they're too fiddly and don't have enough power to go along with it. In addition, we're actually looking at adding cooldowns as a mechanic on some skills, and I'm not talking crazy, 8 to 15 second cooldowns here, but a few seconds to mean that that skills can be used tactically in a more interesting way. Like, for example, the skill Cold Snap at the moment is designed to be a relatively impactful, like, snap of cold that has a good chance of freezing and does some decent damage, but because of the fact that players can spam it really fast, we've had to gradually reduce the freezing and reduce the damage to the point where it's kind of inferior to other skills when used, unless it's in the abuse case. So by adding a couple of seconds of cooldown onto that, we get to restore a lot of its power level.
Oh, so that one was specific to... It was only powerful in this certain situation, so otherwise it was unused?
Right, I mean, we make it to be powerful in the base case, and then people abuse it, so now the abuse case is crazily over the top, and hence we nerf it back down, and now it's only powerful in the abuse case. And that's a cycle that we want to avoid getting into with skill balance. We'd rather have it so the skill itself had enough drawbacks that it's interesting to use in a variety of cases, and is never not powerful.
Me personally, like, I just picked up a 4-slot death bow. I would be interested in seeing, like, I know there's fusings which randomly roll the links between the sockets, but say you have one that already has 3 link sockets, would there be any plans to add a link socket by a really rare item, or would that be too overpowered?
It's something that's being brought up quite a lot, and the problem is that it actually really is overpowered. I mean, it's designed so that you can get 4 sockets relatively easy, and 5 sockets takes a fair amount of work, and 6 is the eventual goal that many people don't reach. I mean, the problem is if 6 is immediately reachable, like many players want, then what is the point of having the socket system with links in the first place? We may as well just link all the items together. So we do want it so it takes a substantial amount of effort to get 6 linked socket items, and they do crop up often enough at the moment that we're quite pleased with the rate, but players have to understand that the game is designed that 5 sockets is actually quite a lot. The 6th one is kind of unnecessary, but it is a perfection thing that players can strive for. So because of that, if we were to add a very rare item that added a link, it could potentially add the final link to a 6-socket item, which is something we want to be very rare, and hence it has to be super, super rare and only used on the final 6th link.
Yeah, I see what you mean. By adding that option, then you know for a fact you would get 6 links instead of having to get really lucky.
Yeah, and a degree of deterministic upgrades like that is okay in certain places. I mean, we do it with the quality system, where you can upgrade the quality to 20 in an entirely upwards way, but most of the rest of the item system is based around the type of slot machine thing, where you're going to occasionally get very lucky, and most of the time you won't quite get what you want.
Hang on, this guy's going to kick my ass. Hold on. He's doing ice spear, triple ice spear. Really hurts.
Well, in the meantime, we have another question. Shadowy Moon is wondering if we will see character gender customization eventually as a microtransaction.
It's very likely that we will sell alternate sex skins for the different characters. Initially, we felt that you get far more personality by playing the one that we designed. You know, for example, the Ranger is female. We designed a story around her, and that's what people are playing as. But there's been such huge demand to play male Rangers and other similar variations that we'll have to add it as a microtransaction purchase. It's worth noting that the cost of developing these alternate models and all the animations that go with them is relatively substantial, so being able to sell them as microtransactions will at least offset that cost.
Any other questions from the chat right now, Reiji?
Yeah, we just got another one from Smoochie. Are there any plans for restrictions on items or levels for certain PvP options, or is the only plan right now to have a completely open format for PvP?
We will be having tiered PvP, for example, level 20 and under dueling and that type of thing, so that people can optimize PvP characters around a variety of different level ranges. This has a few effects. For starters, it produces a different metagame of what skills are used in each one, and secondly, it means that the economy will have an emphasis on good PvP items at a variety of different levels. So if you find a level 20 sword, you don't throw it away as junk because it might have PvP applications.
So scaling in certain ways?
Well, it's just that we have a PvP mode, for example, that you can play if you're level 20 or less, and so people will make exactly level 20 characters to play in that mode.
So would that give you the opportunity to stop the experience gain, like by choice?
That's a good question. We wouldn't want this process to be inconvenient for players, so that may be necessary. Or, yeah, we may have to. I don't know. It's not something we've discussed.
There's a large group of guys over here. It's fun to hit them all with the poison. I'm all through all the forum questions that I have available, but if you want, we can still take a few more questions from the chat.
Sure, I'm happy to answer some more.
Well, this one's quite amusing because I know what he's talking about. Stormy Skyline. Some of us have played too much League of Legends, Dota, and have lost the ability to move with left click. Is mouse remapping coming?
If it's not too difficult for us to add, then we probably will try to.
I don't play a lot of Dota myself, so that hasn't been an issue for me, but I could see that being a nice simple way to switch that around. Wouldn't hurt. I have a question from Egress in the game. Prefix or suffix specific changes instead of current orbs that change all effects. Any would that be also along the lines of too powerful, or is that something that might be possible?
That's quite interesting, actually. I suspect it would be quite powerful and would need to be balanced to be not a particularly frequent thing. It would be kind of a tool that's available on the crafter's toolbox of things they can do to change an item. I'll actually make a note to discuss that with the design guys after the interview, because that's a space that probably has some good design in it.
You mentioned a crafter's toolbox. Is that specific to development, or are you talking about something else?
I just meant in general the concept that there are, a lot of orbs in the game that do specific things. So if you're trying to make an item and you're a very advanced player, you're going to want to use them in a specific order to get what you're going for. For example, maximizing the quality prior to rolling it, and then potentially using alteration orbs to make a really good blue item before using a regal orb to upgrade it to a rare, getting the mod that you want, and so on and so on. There's quite a lot of advanced stuff that crafters can do. So the crafter's toolbox was a reference to the fact that the more orbs you have available, the more options they have to make the item they want.
Right. Me personally, I'm maybe not at the highest end of that advanced stuff, but I love to find a nice base item that already has good sockets, then increase its quality while it's still white, and then use an alchemy orb to make it rare. And then hope for the best.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good way of doing it.
It doesn't always work out, but go ahead.
I got a question from Dragnar. Are you thinking about adding a way to see the hidden item level of items? Example, so you know how many sockets an item can have before you want to trade it.
I would like a way in the user interface to do that. It's just a matter of working it in a way which isn't confusing to new players who don't care about it. For the time being, if you put the item on your cursor and type in chat /item level, it will tell you what that hidden level is, and I agree we do need a better way of representing that.
Interesting. Okay, I did not know that was a thing. So if I had something that I wanted to try to use to craft, I could tell at least what potentially it could become, like what mods it was eligible for.
That's right, it's mod eligibility and things like you can only get 6 sockets on an item that's level 50 or above, so if you've got a level 49 item and you want to know whether it's worth using a ton of jeweler's orbs on it, then this will help you know.
So if you had a level 49, it wouldn't be possible to get 6 sockets.
That's right, yes. This is the system that we're constantly looking into, and subtle changes happen behind the scenes.
I know there's I know you have another question coming up, but I had a question personally from. There's a listing on the forums about what's it currently like sell recipes, I believe is what they've referred to it as. I mean, I know there's always going to be listings like that, but do you have a bunch of stuff that's just not there, or that people haven't found out yet?
I'm pretty sure there are at least a couple that people haven't found out yet, or at least small variations on things, like just off the top of my head, there are some recipes where if all the items involved in the recipe have a full 20 quality, then the result is different, and I have no idea if someone's tried that particular variation, or whether they're hearing this and trying it now in response.
Well, I guess maybe we'll see what that may come of that. I like that system personally. So what were you guys saying, Reiji?
I got 2 questions now. The first one was from Xneck, wondering if there's any plans to add more projectile-type weapons, like throwing knives, spears, axes, etc.
I think that is long-term, but it's probably not something we're getting in the next few months.
And then the next one was Wetmane. Are there any ways that you're planning on letting players inspect each other?
We're aware of the privacy issues regarding the fact that someone may put together a really good PvP build and then not want other players to spy on the fact they've got entirely cold damage or whatever it is. So we're going to make sure that such options are entirely a player-driven thing where they choose they want people to inspect them, but yes, we will allow people to do so, providing they've opted into it.
Random question from Shadowy Moon. Are you guys planning to add more areas other than raid class in the far future as playable areas? Like, for example, the land where the characters come from?
That's a question we've actually had a few times in the last week, and there is definitely space there. In an initial design of the game, we did have the character returning to the place they come from, which is Oriath, I believe after Act 2, though that's not the plan at the moment. Having said that, there's a lot of space in the future for that, and Raid is a very, very large continent for them to explore.
Smoochie's got a super specific question. One of his concerns is that the town portal has no cooldown on it, and are the developers waiting for feedback about something like this, or are they aware of it?
I see what you mean. It's just something that hasn't been properly fixed up yet.
There's some concern in the chat about monster differences. Like after you've run through, right now there's only 2 acts available. So you run through both acts and then you kind of go through them again on a higher difficulty level, but it's the same monsters. Do you have any new additions coming soon about new monster types or any kind of things to vary up the gameplay?
Oh, I have 3 things to talk about there. The first one is that, actually there's 4 things. The first one is that we have more boss mods coming, like, you know, exploding on death and that kind of thing, which will make it so that there's a lot more tactical play when you're dealing with bosses and groups of monsters. Secondly, we have a new AI system for the monsters coming in 099, which means that the individual types of monsters exhibit substantially different behavior from each other. For example, the goatmen they're more likely to jump down on you from above and less likely from below, and this type of thing means that you now care where you are with regard to goatmen in the level. And the goat shamans will cast their fire shield when you get close to them but not from a distance, so that means they're using their mana more efficiently and it's more likely to kill the player. There are other things as well, like scavengers will stay just outside of range and throw rocks at you, and once they close in, a group of them will come and engage in melee combat. Water elementals that cast Water Nova are more likely to do it when there's more targets around for them to hit. Basically a whole bunch of stuff like that, which is designed to make the monsters have a lot more variety so that they're different when you encounter each one of them. Then the third point about this is that we've actually planned a giant set of skills that all the monsters are going to get, and we have a document which dictates what direction we want to take every instance of the monsters in. For example, there'll be some scavengers that carry burning brands that they, like fire torches that they can throw at you, doing a lot of damage the first time that it hits you, but of course they do less damage in subsequent hits. And we have a lot of plans so that every time you encounter a different variation of monster in the game, for example, different sand spitters elsewhere, they'll hopefully do something that's slightly different from the other ones. And finally, to actually answer your question properly, in higher difficulties there will be a bigger spread of monsters. For example, in the second difficulty we're planning to make it so you don't just encounter, say, shield crabs and spawns in the first cave, but you might encounter cave monsters from later in the act, because you've already had the introduction to them previously, and this means that it's a bit more random as you play through it.
There was a mention, I don't know about specifics, but original Diablo had a few varied monster types, but I have to imagine at least now, at least Diablo originally, the number 1, not number 2, but I'm sure we have much more monster variety here than there were in the original Diablo.
I'm not sure of the numbers in their game, but we actually have more monster variety coming here as well. Like, there's more monsters being added to even Act 1 and 2 quite soon, so hopefully we'll keep those numbers pretty high.
Here's a good one for us archers. Are there any more versions of quivers going to be available and have them more useful later on in the game? As you may or may not notice, the one I currently have is the dexterity one, which has been the most commonly used one to me, because it's the most constantly useful. But there are other ones that would just add minor amounts of fire damage or cold damage or lightning damage. I don't have any on me at the moment, but any plans to increase the different variety there?
Yeah, it's something we want to sort out, and one of the main goals before open beta is to get the weapon progressions and other item progressions sorted out to be good. For example, 098 sorted out our weapon progressions, but we haven't yet dealt with quivers, and I completely understand that, 1 to 3 fire damage may be compelling at level 1, but it's less useful at level 40, and then you basically have to take the dexterity quiver. So we will be making sure that the base types have several different options available, and there isn't just a strict chain of this one is always better than the previous one. In addition, quivers will be available in the in-game vendor, along with other weapons and armors that the vendors will sell to you as of the next patch, I believe.
So you'll be able to purchase them within the shops as well?
Yeah, it was an oversight that they weren't included before.
Well, this is an interesting question from Smoochie. Are there any plans to have items that increase your light radius?
It's something that's been discussed, and it's quite possible that we will do that. We have to find some way for it to affect the gameplay slightly.
That may also, if I just make a comment, that may also have some sort of implications in the graphic settings, because your shadows and stuff will be quite a bit different, and your viewable play screen will be different, so you may end up with different uses of your hard drives and stuff.
Yeah, we'll have to make sure that it doesn't have any bad effects there.
You was talking about a question from in the game. You were talking about the AI changes that were upcoming. Will those also affect player-controlled creatures like specters or zombies? No, did we lose him?
Oh, sorry about that. I was pressing the wrong key to talk.
Oh,
okay,
sorry.
so
oh, hang on a second. You got really quiet on us. Did your mic go out?
Can you hear me okay now?
a little bit louder.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
So, although we have a lot of minion changes coming in a later patch, as mentioned before, it's likely that they will initially use the new AI system as soon as we have that ready.
So we're going to start wrapping things up here real quick. Do you have any teasers for us on future skills or keystones? Ask some people in the chat.
That's a good question. I can talk about one skill. We have a skill called Righteous Fire coming relatively soon. It is basically designed for casters who want a very large damage boost at the expense of basically killing themselves. So it basically puts yourself on fire and you take a very large amount of damage over a few seconds, enough that you'll be reduced to 1 life quite quickly, at which point the skill ends. And during that time it does fire damage to everything near you, as well as dramatically increasing your spell damage in a multiplicative way. So when you turn it on, it's very likely to push you to certain death if a monster hits you while you're low on life. But it means that you can do immense damage from the spells that you cast, as well as incinerating the monsters nearby.
That sounds scary in a lot of ways. Hardcore people may want to look elsewhere.
Yeah, indeed, but it can work relatively well in hardcore if you're good at controlling your ability to recover life to not have it kill you.
On that, I know there's one of the keystone passives that grants you immunity to chaos damage, increase your energy shield, and also sets you at 1 maximum hit point. Would that also affect that skill, or would that not work in tandem?
The interaction there is that because you're on 1 hit point, it immediately cancels itself.
Oh, so that would not work.
Yeah, we had to consider that one.
So, any date that planned for the next patch?
At the moment, we're looking at having the patch deployed by around the end of April. I mean, it may come a little sooner or it may come a little later, but that's the time frame we're working to. So it's something along the lines of being up on alpha within around 1 week, and then up on beta around 1 week later.
So is there a alpha testing availability for those who might want to get in on testing?
So in terms of alpha testing, people are welcome to apply for it, but we generally pick people who have a really good history of actually useful beta testing posts. So it's not a place to go to just want to play the game or to see new features. The community there likes discussing the finer points of the game, and it's better suited for people who have a really good understanding of it, as well as a post history that shows us that they're not just going to go and leak information, because there's a relatively strict set of rules about what they can and can't talk about, and it would be very bad for information to get out about the alpha content. And because the testers have been very good with this, it means we can put very early versions up on alpha, which works better for everyone, and it'd be bad if screenshots of bugs and stuff got out.
Yeah, I can see how that could be, in my opinion, an issue. The last question I'm going to go with is, I know we spoke about this weekend's thing, and I'm not trying to confirm whether or not it's going to be cutthroat or not, but you were discussing it quite a bit, and that was a few more questions that popped up about the ETA on the cutthroat server. So could you give us one more time the info on where they need to go to talk about to get in on that thing this weekend?
Okay, so the basic plan is that we would like to run a cutthroat event this weekend, and we intend to do so unless something comes up. And that something could just be we decide it's not ready. So let's say 60% chance that we're running it. We're pretty confident that it's going to go ahead, but we could easily decide to delay it if it just isn't fun enough. And the reason there is that we're going to expose it to a lot of people, and we want to make sure that it's good on the first try. And if it's something we can fix with a few more hours of rules tweaks, then we'll definitely do so before we show a lot of people. We don't want them to think that it's not a good game mode just because our first attempt at it needs some work. So because of this, we're going to be running a private test of it for just really, really keen people, which will be before the weekend. And I've put a post in the beta general discussion forum with some information there, and we're just looking to get 20 or 30 or 40 people to give it a go with our current game rules tomorrow. And if that works well, then that sounds really good for the weekend, and if we learn a lot that we have to fix before the weekend, then we'll do so.
Alright, I'm going to wrap everything up for today. We're well past the time we were originally planning on doing this for. But thanks a lot for sticking around for a long time. If you want to hang out and answer questions within the chat, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to stream for a little bit longer, but I'm going to reset it real quick to set it up for the YouTube stream. And then, thanks everybody for coming out. I do have 2 keys to give away right now, and then I will put you guys into where we're going to put the rest of the keys that we have to give out. So anyone interested in beta, I'm going to put in a key in the chat here in like 5 seconds. So get ready for copy-paste action.
Thanks very much for having me, by the way.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming with us. We had a fun time. We had a lot of people in here chatting, a lot of questions to be asked. We'll look forward to doing something like this in the future. If you guys have more questions, I'm sure we'll see you on the forums, get you guys a chance to write those out for us so we can get all prepared and ready to go for the next time. So,
Great, sounds good.
Thanks a lot for coming again, Chris. If you want to answer questions in the chat, you're more than welcome to. And I'll see you guys on soon. I got one more key I'm going to put in right away. Alright, thanks for coming, guys. I'm gonna
Not a
restart
problem.
my
Thanks
stream.
very much.